We must stop these team. They have only 72 hours to accomplish their objective. The four specialists will exterminate the troops of DAC. They will never be defeated. Shock Troopers, Second Squad.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Controller Port Podcast, episode 36. My name's Benjamin Yoder, and I'm here this week to talk to you about things that are unfortunately mostly only semi-related to games. Some of them are more directly related. Other ones are not so directly related. Basically, what I mainly did this week, I did play some more PUBG. And then also more Toukiden 2. So those two things I did play, but I don't really have anything too interesting to say about either of them at this point. I'm not deep enough in Toukiden 2 to really feel that good about talking like an entire another segment about it. Although I will say that I switched over. I forget if I mentioned before when I played Toukiden 2, but I was using like these fist weapons, and I liked them a lot. But I ended up going with the sword and shield just because there's a lot more flexibility in how you can use them as like an attack or a defense stance. But yeah, I'm working on Toukiden 2 still. I'm like in chapter 3 in the story, and I think that's like halfway through the game or a little under halfway through the game. But mainly what I think is most interesting to talk about this week is I went ahead and tried some VR chat, and obviously VR chat, got popular on the internet with, all those videos of Knuckles going around making sounds and saying things. And I mean, a lot of those VR chat videos, I did go through a lot of them, and I enjoyed them for the most part. But when I actually sat down and played VR chat for myself, and just a quick note, I'm playing the desktop version. I do not have a VR headset. I did play some VR chat with a friend of mine, and then also a little bit on my own. And really, and maybe it's because everyone's so self-aware of those videos now, anyone who shows up and starts like doing any of that stuff is just more of like, oh, you're doing the internet video thing. Cool, I guess. You just kind of ignore them. But what I think it was most interesting about VR chat, and probably it's not anything particularly new. I mean, there's always been like Second Life and other virtual world things. It's just being able to go around these worlds that have been handcrafted by, or sometimes they're handcrafted, sometimes imported from another game. But anyways, people build these worlds, and they can be really bizarre sometimes. And then there's like different avatars that are really weird. I was like this weird, like shadowy wizard thing with uncontrollable limbs who was just like balling up and like spreading his limbs out nonstop over and over again. And then one that had like appendages exploding off of him at all times and leaving like pools of blood behind him. It's just a lot of really weird, like fever dream kind of stuff. And then on the other side of it, there's also like entire maps from other video games imported, like Lethane Plateau from Final Fantasy XI, as well as like Argonne is in there. And honestly, there's nothing in them. Somebody literally, I mean, I'm sure it probably wasn't super easy, but they basically imported these maps from the game and then made them into lobbies in VR chat. And they're pretty broken, but it's kind of interesting because you can walls are kind of a suggestion in VR chat rather than an actual thing. There's a lot of walls you can just kind of jump up and fly over. So you get to see some of these areas and games that you wouldn't always necessarily be able to like jump up on. Like there's these big things in Final Fantasy XI called like crag hollows or crags, and Holla is specifically the one in Lethane Plateau. And like you just never would see what was from the top of that crag. You just never really see it, except for maybe like a cutscene where maybe a camera's rotating around the top of it. But like you can just jump and climb all the way up and then like look down at Lethane Plateau from like a whole new angle from what you're playing. And since it's just the map from Final Fantasy XI imported, it just looks like Final Fantasy XI. But then there's like elements missing, like obviously there's no monsters, or if there's monsters, they just are stationary and make a sound or something like that. But yeah, it's just neat to poke around and see what people have started creating in that game, and as it's gotten more popular, I think there's a little bit more attention on creating that stuff. I will say that it's pretty clear. It's interesting because like the people who are playing the PC game very clearly don't really have much of an investment in it a lot of times, and they usually just go around and harass people. Where the people that are using VR headsets seem to often be in more like actual conversations. I'm sure it probably just depends on who you're there hanging out with and your personality type too. But I feel like every time I see people just like standing in a group talking, they always have, you know, the handset movement and things like that. And I think it's just maybe they have more of an investment into that kind of thing. And also, there's something to be said about, you know, with VR, it feeling like a virtual world to some extent, and you being there in person versus like just sitting in front of the PC and just like spinning around and stuff. I would just like pick a character and then like I have a trackball mouse, so I do this in PUBG sometimes too, where I'll just like spin the mouse wheel and my character will just like flip out and start spinning everywhere, and it looks kind of crazy. And so I was doing that in VR chat too. People are like, "Are you okay? Are you fine?" And I'm just like sitting down in a chair with my head rotating around in circles and stuff. But yeah, it was interesting, and it's kind of strange. I would say I'm not. There was a long time where I wouldn't voice chat at all, even with friends. I just felt it to be very embarrassing for some reason. I'm not sure why. I think recording videos helped a lot with that, getting over that. I think maybe just embarrassment about my voice or something. But I will say one thing that I still don't really do is I don't really voice chat with strangers still. And there's a lot of times in VR chat where somebody will talk to me and I just don't say anything back. And I feel kind of bad. But I'm just like, this feels wrong and embarrassing right now when I really should just say something. But hey, you know, whatever. I am afraid to admit that there were definitely times after I played some VR chat that I was like, I wonder how much a VR headset costs, and then go look it up and be like, that's a lot of money. That's more money than I should ever probably spend on this thing without, like, you know, having a significant, amount of software that I'm interested in trying. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Then 3 days later, I was looking up the technical specifications required for using a VR headset, and I'm like, God damn it, I shouldn't be doing this. But I haven't bought one. I shouldn't buy one, and I hope I don't buy one. So if I do buy one, shame on me. You guys will be the first to know, probably, or among the first to know. Because really, there's very few things I really want to try, but it's just there's something so appealing. Like when you're playing on the PC, specifically VR chat, you just can really tell the difference of just like I have such limited ways to interact with this world compared to other people. Like I can click on objects, I can't really rotate them, I can't move them around, I can't draw really well, I can't like do anything, and like the amount of expression that comes out of someone using those VR headsets with like being able to move their arms and in some cases legs, with some people who have leg trackers, it's just there's an extra layer of like believability about someone in that game, and feeling it looks like, at least from the outside, that it's just an extra level of like investment you get from using like a VR headset and just being a part of that world. I think that's super interesting, and I think that's probably what makes VR in general pretty interesting. But I haven't really used it much. I did try. I think I talked about this before. I did try Gran Turismo Sport on PS VR, which looked awful, but at the very least I was able to like look at the chair beside me, and like if I thought hard enough about it, I could say, hey, this chair is actually here, brain, and my brain would be like, yeah, it's probably there. And would accept that, which was kind of interesting to do. I didn't actually drive around in that game very much. I just actually stared in the chair beside me for the most part, because I was more interested in the space of being in the car rather than like, you know, actually driving. So yeah, VR chat is a weird thing. I don't know how much time I put into it. I can look it up here real quick, but I put a handful of hours into it. I think I might spend a little more time into it. There's just something bizarre and appealing about, you know, moving around that environment and seeing people. That is my PlayerUnknown's Battleground time. I put like 5 hours, so I haven't put much time into VR chat, but it's pretty neat. Another thing I got, and this isn't very specifically game related, but it is very handy. I bought an Xbox One controller. I don't have an Xbox One. I have an Xbox 360 and a original Xbox. But basically, I've used the DualShock for PC gaming for many, many years. And it's always been kind of a nightmare. I use PCs a lot, but there's a lot of times where I'm just very confused about what's happening, and setting up those DualShock drivers is always very confusing for me. And I got to the point where I was trying to use like DS4 tool, and I couldn't get the D-pad to work, specifically when I was trying to play Neo Geo games. And I was just like, I think I just need to buy a decent controller. But I was kind of split because I wanted a decent controller with like a good D-pad, which an Xbox 360 controller doesn't have a good D-pad. But I also wanted a controller that would be good for standard like console style games or gamepad style games. Really, mouse and keyboard games, I'm perfectly fine. I love mouse and keyboard, but for games that are specifically built for gamepad, I wanted an option for that for more modern games. So I was thinking about like doing like a Super Nintendo style PC controller and as well as like using an Xbox 360 controller. But I played Cuphead at my dad's house, and I thought the D-pad on the Xbox One controller isn't bad. It's pretty solid. At least I really enjoyed using it. It's a little slick, if that's the right word, where like your thumb kind of just rolls around on it a bit much more than I would like it to, but it seems precise. So I decided to get an Xbox One controller. I made it GameCube themed, which more or less worked out, I guess. Not really, but I like the color purple a lot anyways. So I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, I was just like, it was amazing because usually I have to spend like 20-40 minutes trying to get my controller set up before playing anything on a PC. And you may be saying, well, why, you're a fucking dumbass, why does it take you so long to get a DualShock set up on a PC? Which is fine, you can say that. I don't blame you. I probably just have something I missed. But I always just had a lot of trouble with the DualShock, and this was literally, I plugged the controller in, Windows made the device connection sound, and then I loaded up Shock Troopers Second Squad, and it worked perfectly fine, and I played through Shock Troopers Second Squad. And that's a great game. You should play it sometimes I think both Shock Trooper games are really good. I think some people prefer one over the other. But I think they're both great games, and the second one has great English voice acting. So yeah, it's good fun. I like it better than Metal Slug because it's a lot easier to read. I have a lot of problems with Metal Slug overall, I think, where there's so much going on screen, it's very hard to parse what's happening sometimes. It's part of why I like Contra better than Metal Slug. It just feels like there's a lot less stuff you have to sit there and try to read. Metal Slug feels like a game very much focused on graphics. I am just playing the PC ports of Neo Geo games, and I don't know if this is the original hardware. I feel like I've played Metal Slug games in the original hardware, and it's very slow. But every time I play a Neo Geo game emulated through whatever, it was like .emu or something like that, it has a ton of frame rate issues. It's just like chugging nonstop. I don't know. It's not enough to make me dislike the games usually, but it is a little concerning. Anytime I play anything emulated, I get a little concerned about that stuff. Like, am I really getting the original experience for this? Which, I mean, that's a good reason for when I do go to an arcade, if someone has like an MVS cabinet with the actual cartridge in there, or maybe like the whatever, 1,000 titles in one cart or whatever. Anyways, either way, playing on real hardware, I like to kind of compare and see if I notice as much slowdown. But I don't go to arcades super often, so yeah. And one side note, this is even less related about games. I fixed my laptop maybe. I had a laptop that was just overheating nonstop, and I used to use it as my main computer, and then I bought an actual PC. So actually, and then I had another desktop in between that I took from my grandfather, who didn't need it anymore. Anyways, but yeah, so it was my laptop was overheating a bunch, and so I was like, I'm gonna try to fix this because A, I don't really use this laptop, and then B, it'd be a fun project. And it was difficult. I've never taken a laptop apart before, and that is kind of a mess inside. It was easier than I thought in some ways. Yeah, I just replaced the thermal paste on it, replaced the fan. I did break one of the screws on the fan mount, so I hope that's not gonna be a problem. But but I booted the PC back up, and it seems fine. I ran Windows updates on it. Looking at it over there, I don't hear the fan like freaking out on it or anything. So hopefully that just means the fan is not needed right now, and not that the fan's not working. So yeah, we're gonna go to the fortune cookie segment. I kind of thought about talking about Nintendo Labo this week, but I really don't have anything to say other than I'm glad Project Giant Robo is back. I always wanted to play Project Giant Robot, and that game seems to be back with what's it called? Nintendo Labo. So if you haven't looked up Nintendo Labo, look it up. It's interesting, but it's also not very video game related. It's like it's a toy more than anything, which is nothing bad. I'm always a proponent of like Nintendo doing weird stuff. Yeah, because I'd rather them do like if I had to choose between Mario Odyssey and like a Nintendo Labo, I'd probably play the Nintendo Labo stuff. Just like I want to play the weird thing rather than Mario Odyssey, which I mean Mario Odyssey's a great game. I just don't. At some point, you play enough Mario, and yeah, I don't know. Mario Galaxy's great though. I need to play Galaxy 2 still. Anyways, fortune cookie time. I got StarCraft Brood War. I feel like I talked about Blizzard recently. I think last week I talked about Diablo. And in there I kind of briefly mentioned StarCraft. Unfortunately, I don't have anything specific to say about StarCraft Brood War per se. It's the expansion pack to StarCraft. Adds new story, new units, all that good stuff. The problem with me and StarCraft is I played that game solely for user-generated maps. So Brood War was an important component because some of those maps would require Brood War. Specifically, I can think of the Mario Party maps and stuff that had like a bunch of mini games. I remember some of the units on there that were being used were specific to Brood War. But it depended on the version of those maps you did. But yeah, user-made maps in StarCraft are really bizarre. It's just a bunch of random stuff. Sometimes you'd have something where you have like one hero character moving around, and you could like recover health and stuff. Get currency that you could spend. There's just so many like RPG elements people like forced into those StarCraft user-made maps. There's also like tower defense games. Just like racing games, like with Mario Party, there's a ton of mini games and stuff like avoiding bombs, killing the most of a certain thing. They're often like pretty imbalanced. You'd have like oh, I'm Toad, and then like they would be like the spider monsters that shot really slowly compared to like a Marine who could shoot really fast, and it's just like you're immediately at a disadvantage for that stuff. StarCraft is an interesting thing for that reason for me. The actual, and I think I mentioned this last week, I was an Age of Empires RTS guy. I was not really into Warcraft very much. I mean, I liked Warcraft 2, but I hadn't played Age of Empires 2 yet. So, like, I enjoyed Warcraft until I went to Age of Empires. And then after that, I kind of moved on to StarCraft. But with StarCraft, it was pretty much, I'd say 95% of my time in that game was done with like user-generated maps. So I wish I had more to say about StarCraft Brood War as a whole, but I don't really. I think that's probably going to be the same story you get from me anytime StarCraft comes up. I'll just tell you about all these like modified maps and stuff. I remember there's I don't know the thoughts behind some of this stuff. There's this one mode where and it had a bunch of different names, but I remember specifically for some reason it was called The Simpsons a lot of the time usually. And there'd be these bunkers at the top of the screen and at the bottom of the screen. And I think it was generally team-based 3-on-3. And you'd have a bunker that would just spawn units nonstop. And then you had this like little peon that stood on the corner with these little pads they could walk onto, and those pads would give general instructions to like all of your units. So you can sit there and build these units up around your bunker, and at some point, if you had too many units around your bunker, it would eventually force the spawn to stop, and it'd be this really annoying noise saying that a unit couldn't spawn because there's too many units in that one area. But yeah, it's just like it would be called The Simpsons, and you would choose a character, and you would just have an infinite spawning amount of this certain character type, and you'd sit there and you try to, like, overpower the other characters by attacking individual groups and stuff. But it was just kind of like this constant flow of units moving from place to place. It wasn't really like you commanding anyone, which might be why I liked it. I like the mass command of units in Age of Empires, and StarCraft never really had that, nor did Warcraft. You can only select like 10 units at a time. But it was funny because like I was saying earlier with like the imbalance stuff, what would essentially happen is after you killed enough things, you would level up, and you would change to a different character or unit type sometimes in those. Because you're only generating one unit, and it's just automatically generating them. And sometimes you'd actually like level up to another unit that was intended to be better, but they were kind of just bad. And so you would just be kind of screwed for a while. And then like you'd have certain enemy types, like the snipers and stuff would just like obliterate some unit types. It was just really imbalanced, but it's interesting. It's crazy how much people do with modding tools and stuff like that. And in StarCraft specifically, being able to get different game modes, like going as far as like having a moving recording thing that you could do. I mean, it wasn't recording anything, but you could basically got the camera controls, and like different actions and stuff that you could make a movie with. It was very bizarre and strange. So yeah, StarCraft is a good time. Anyways, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you guys very much for listening. I have no promises on anything right now. I'm kind of in the moment of getting some of my life pulled back together and making sure I get some things done. Got my haircut, got my car oil changed. I finished that laptop that was just sitting on my desk for forever. So I'm just kind of taking off these little things bit and bit at a time. It's been a slow start to 2018 for me, but hopefully I'm slowly recovering. I definitely don't feel as sick this week at the very least. I have a cough drop, so hopefully I don't think I coughed during this podcast. I was coughing pretty bad today, but I think the cough drop might have helped. So yeah, so hopefully going forward things will be good. Things will be great. All right, I hope you guys have a good week. Goodbye.